Welcome to this CPG Masterclass series webinar. My name is Tom Bentley. I'm the Communications and Event Manager for the Confederation of Professional Golf. So I'd like to welcome you all and thank you all for joining as well. I understand that as golf starting to open up, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to join these, but appreciate all the support once again. Before we do get started, just a quick one, just make sure your microphones are muted, but keep your screens on. As always, we like to see who's on the call, who's engaging and who's listening. We'll also allocate sort of 10-15 minutes, as always, to a Q&A afterwards with Marie and Davide. So do post your questions in the chat as we go along. So I've got a list of questions to work from at the end. And then, as always, I'm recording this as well. So I'll upload them straight onto the hub page afterwards. So if you miss anything, you can go straight onto there and also view any of the other webinars that we've done as well. So without further ado, I'll hand you straight over to Marie Jeffery, who is a level AA PGA Austria professional, and Davide Mori, who is a PGA of Italy professional. And they're going to be talking about body language is our mother tongue. So it's a part two follow on from the first one, which we go way back to early April, I think, guys, when you did your presentation, Marie. So without further ado, I'll hand you straight over.
So thank you, Tom, and I thank you all the people that are listening today, and I thank you, the CPG, to let me make this introduction. So I will start with a small example of body language and then share with you a couple of slides. Oh no, non posso fare questo. Questa è la cosa più bella che mi sia mai successa. So, I guess not a lot of you could understand what I did just say, but I do believe that most of you could guess in which state and mood I was during this. So, why? One of the reasons could be the one that Daniel Kahneman gives in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, where he basically divides the system into into two systems. We have system one, which is the intuitive one, and we have system two, which is the logical one. System one is working very fast, like snap a finger, while system two needs more time to elaborate information. Then another reason could be just the one that actually we start to communicate with our body well before languages were developed. Then through the time and culture developed different languages, but still today that we have we still using body language, even if most of the time we do unconsciously. And if we just think to babies, the first way to communicate is are the hands, so using the hands. And actually, something interesting coming out in a recent research from the University of San Francisco, where they say that actually the kids that are using the hands more are actually solving the problem easier than others. And they also say and believe that using the hands is a way to distress the brain. So one question that make me always smile when people ask me is why Italian people are using so much the hands and the body when they're talking. And my first answer is, we go to school for that. No, I'm joking. There are very different hypotheses about, and somebody say that we took this from Greek culture. Somebody else say that while the big city were getting busier and louder, there was a need to communicate differently. But it looks like that the main reason is because of the geographical position of Italy. So, situated in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, Italy was surrounded always from many different cultures, which passed through Italy through the years and saw the need to communicate differently. So we go into the next slide. And a good stance and posture reflect a proper state of mind. So I really agree with this quote. And I also believe that actually the state of mind could be influenced from the posture. And could influence the posture of the people, the persons who is doing it, so basically the transmitter, and also who is looking at that, so the receiver. If I can relate about what Marie said in the first webinar, body language will influence all the 4 principles that are always present in any communication. So will influence the factual info, so basically the information we want to give, will influence the order, which is actually the intention behind this information. And then will influence and impact the relationship. And even more, I do believe it will give a lot about self-revelation. So body language would say a lot about ourselves. Now we just slide and go to the next. If we take in body language, we can actually chunk into 2 big pieces. On one side, we have a gesture, and on the other side, we have posture. Gesture should be congruent with what with the message we give, to make the message clear and strong. Because, for example, if I say I play very good today, shaking the head with a no, the message will be not as clear as I will say I play very good today. So, and then on the other side, we have the posture, which can also be chunked down in 3 different aspects, which are position and placement, because also where we stand will impact the communication with others. And then we have the eyes movement into the space and the breath location. So as the most of you know, eyes movement and breath location are strictly connected with our senses. So if somebody is going to looking up, is getting access, or breathing high in the chest, is getting access to the visual sense. If somebody is going more to the horizon, or is breathing centering in the chest, is getting access to the auditory sense. And if somebody is looking down, or the breath is really deep in the stomach, then we're getting access to the kinesthetic sense, which is basically the feeling. In a golf context, an example could be as follows. Let's say today I speak with a student and explain the low point. So after the explanation, I just stand beside the student and I ask, can you think of the low point? If the student take a little time to experience this, it will give us some accessing cues based on the strategy that he used to relate, in this case, with the low point. And for example, if somebody is going and say yes and is looking up, then I may start giving him an exercise which is based on a visual. So I will give him, put some things on the ground, or maybe draw a line with a chalk and make him practice it. If somebody is staying more centered, also the breath very centered, then I may start with something auditory. So I will ask him to brush the grass, even with the eyes closed, and just try to relate and rehearse the sound. On the other hand, if somebody is looking down, or the breath is really deep in the stomach, then I may start with something more feeling-wise. So I can ask the student to feel the extension of the right arm after the ball contact. So These were just an example, and to conclude, I would like to say that body language should be always congruent with the message we want to give, because the message will be clear and really reinforce the message, basically. And then understanding the successing cues from student can give us, as a coach, a better chance to understand the student, to connect with the student, and to guide the student. And actually can give us a better understanding if we want to pace the student in some way, so use the strategy that the student is using, or lead the student when we believe that the strategy that he uses is not very useful for this certain task. So on my side is everything. So I thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. And now I let Marie go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome also from my side to everyone, and thanks for listening in. I want to start with a quote that is from a Hollywood movie. 60% of all communication is non-verbal. Body language, 30% is tone of voice. So 90% of what you're saying is not coming out of your mouth. I think especially as coaches, we need to be really aware of this, because we spend a lot of time educating ourselves and further educating ourselves. And a lot of times we educate ourselves on the what. And this quote always reminds me back that we should spend an equal time and try to find some sort of balance between the what and the how, especially our delivery style, because we can have the best information. If we struggle to get it across, and if we struggle to connect to the student, then this information may just disappear. And the other thing, it's interesting because it's from a Hollywood movie, is the fact that everything around us as coaches, if we have a curious mindset and an open mindset, can teach us and can show us something. So it could be the guy down the road giving golf lessons. It could be a tennis coach. It could be a fitness coach. It could be a friend. It could be especially a colleague from a different cultural background, where we can pick up maybe on certain things, points that could enhance our coaching and the way we deliver to the student. So it's not always just the first class information and on the what, it's always on the how as well. When dealing with body language and with experience in general, there is one big word which is called submodalities. Submodalities has been around a long time. Already in Greek philosophy, Aristotle used it he called it the qualities of the senses. So oftentimes the word itself means under example of modalities. So a modality would be visual, the V, auditive, the A, or kinesthetic, the K. So they are under examples. And oftentimes when we state or when we talk to a student, we often interpret things. So I would go, John, you didn't look very motivated on the course today. Not looking very motivated is a mixture and as to a certain degree of all these submodalities. So especially when we are coaches, this is a concept I would strongly recommend you to look into, because it can give us a wide range of understanding experience and understanding movement in a different perspective, because we don't interpret, we just describe. We describe, what do we see? What are the under examples of that? What do we hear? And what do we feel? Which gives us more freedom going away from pure interpretations of something. Because there is also in neuroscience, in new neuroscience, the idea that emotions, for example, are not something that are just happening to us from the outside, but that they are actively created inside of us. And that there is no such thing as one emotion of sadness. Sadness can have many variations of these submodalities, And it can be different sadness in one situation and then in another situation. And it can also be very different between one person and another person. So therefore, it really pays off to work with the submodalities and getting used to describing things really in detail, because this also allows us to gain more granularity. Granularity means I have a wide library of words to describe things. And this is especially true when it comes to states of mind. If we, for example, say, I feel good or I feel bad, then this is very two extremes of a scale. But I don't have any form to express anything in between the shades of gray, so to speak. The more words I have to describe these submodalities and to describe states of mind, the more I can really also be aware of them, also working with a student. Like the example Davide put on, the more aware I can be about his body position, the words he's using, the better I can give him cues that might help him in this moment, in this modality, to go along and progress. The second concept that is very important when it comes to body language, but also when working with people in motion, is the concept of modeling. We have to distinguish this. There is copying and then there is modeling. Copying means you take the full package. You take everything you see, everything you hear, everything you feel, and you transfer it over. Modeling means that you selectively pick submodalities so that you can really filter them and figure out what's good for me, what's not good for me, what's not suiting maybe my style, and you can add the things that will improve you. One exercise I like to do a lot with also my junior teams and players that I teach in a team frame is I do a modeling exercise where I put one player or myself in the middle in a certain position, like you just see Tiger right now. And you try to first ask yourself, what does this position consist of? So you try to really bit by bit piece the other players in the group together until they stand exactly like this. And then you ask yourself, and that's exactly the difference to copying something, you ask yourself, what is a positive for me about this position and what is a negative? And then you can really start to get a feeling of, okay, I'm not Tiger. So if I'm standing like Tiger, what would give me something positive adding? And what is something I would say, that's not working for me? And because that is the question, the third question we have to ask ourselves is then, what would happen to me if I would stay in this position for a longer period of time? Because a lot of the changes we want to make with players should be lasting, should be long, over a longer period of time, working and staying like this. For this to happen, they really need to become part of their system. So they need to be possible to make them their own, and they also need to integrate it in their system. It needs to fit them. So the last part of this exercise would be, in this position, ask yourself, okay, if I could do one crucial change to this position, the way Tiger is standing right now, what would it be for me? And then make this change and then think, okay, what changed now? Okay, how did the whole system fit in? And then you can really start to pick and choose these submodalities and go, yeah, that is good, I add this. Or no, for some reason, if I think long-term, nah, that's not working for me. So these two concepts of the submodalities and further on with the modeling are very important in a body language environment, and also when you work with people on movement. So why body language in general is so important to us is, especially as coaches, is one thing, it helps us to be present. And the interesting thing is when you hear, when you read about the military, for example, as soon as you get information and if you're told something, you stand to attention. So you stand in a certain upright body position with your eyes level, So you're really in a position that you can take on your whole surrounding and all the information you get. Because this standing to attention in a military frame can mean life or death situations. So having that information or not having it makes a vital difference. The other thing is about exchanging information. For me, credibility is created between the lines. And it's created on all channels. So that is what Davide earlier referred to, the communication square. We really need to be congruent on all of these. And our body language needs to be congruent with what we're saying to really bring the message across and to send on all three of these channels. Because if I don't know the channel one person is in, I better be really broad in my approach to really capture every channel I can send on so they can get as much in as possible. And as well as like congruency, there is one interesting thing in journalism. When you write an article and you decide on a picture in journalism, there is one thing that can sometimes happen, which is not, no one really strives for, is a image text gap, which means that an image is put in an article that is completely opposing the text or not really supporting it. So the strongest articles are always the ones that where the text and the image really form a unit and send the same message. This also goes along with empathy, what Davide said about pacing people. If I want to pace someone, I could really try to attune to their body language, to their wording they use. If they use visual wording, for example, I attune to their speed they're talking in, also their pitch or their tone. So this helps me to really create a connection without being effective or like trying to copying someone. It's really a subtle thing. If you see people that are very well attuned, then you always notice when they talk, they get very similar. So these similarities help us to connect and to create empathy with the student. The other thing that was also mentioned before is the state of mind. There is beautiful work by Amy Cuddy about body position and our state of mind. She talks a lot about high power positions and low power positions, and especially how modern technology, when you work with children, you really notice it, how modern technology changes the way our bodies, the positions our bodies are in, and also our state of mind. So the high power position really gives you access to all your resources, while the lower body position really shuts you in within yourself. So this can also create a downward spiral. That's, for example, one thing I use a lot with players on the course, to be aware on their body position in a certain moment in time. Because what we as coaches want to do at the end of the day is create tacit knowledge. And tacit comes from Latin tacere, which means silent, or tacitus, which means passed over in silence. So it's basically silent knowledge, and it's embodied knowledge, knowledge that we really own. It's not just something that we heard once, it's something that we own. And because we own it, we can really transfer it over to different situations and are flexible with it. It's a bit like the saying, if you only have a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. So the more flexible we have, if we have like a toolbox full of things, then we can capture every situation from a different angle and use tools and variate them. Because for me, when you look at and I get asked that a lot from students, is when you look at these tour swings today, my opinion is they're not built to look that way. They are built to function that way, and in the end, ended up looking like this. So if we just go by recreating a look, which would be, for example, copying, we will not have the benefit of the same function. If we come from the functional approach, then we can really create something that might look a little bit different because it's a different person, but something that really works as well. What we see and what we admire so much in pros is under pressure. So therefore, I would like to end with a bit controversial quote, but I think it's a very nice one to reflect on. Your players will remember how you coached more than what you coached. And even if you disagree on this, if you think back to the people that influenced you in your childhood, growing up, in sports, in whatever it was, then you really think, if you think back, you will come up with a lot of things, how they did things and how they talked to you and how they handled certain situations. So I think it's always between a balance between the how and the what. For anyone who's interested in more, I can strongly recommend all these 3 books. Kahneman is a bit hard to read sometimes, but it's really worth getting through there. Thinking Fast and Slow. He won a Nobel Prize for this book. Lisa Feldman Barrett is really interesting, how emotions are made, talking a lot about granularity and how we create emotions inside based on experiences and beliefs. And Amy Cuddy, Presence, is a really good book on body language. So for whoever wants to go further on that. And thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to answer some questions.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Marie and Davide. Hope everybody enjoyed that, listening and learn a little bit more from that presentation. We'll move straight on to the Q&A session. So if you do have any questions for both of them, please post them in the chat now, and I'll spend a bit of time going through that. I guess whilst we're waiting, I'll just start things off, if that's okay. Just sort of wanting to understand the sort of key benefit of this modeling sort of idea that you've talked about, Marie. So I think, is it an idea? Is it using the idea and the premise of social identity theory, whereby we imitate behaviour to fit in with somebody else? Is modelling based on that in some way, in that by imitating or picking key parts of the way somebody behaves, will that gain a learner's trust and therefore benefit them in the lesson further down?
There is one thing in communication science as well that is a big thing, which is IU sorting. So that you respect the other person for who he is, and that you always want to guide him in the direction he wants to go, not push him in a way he doesn't want to go. So I think that modeling for me as a coach is a way of really honoring the individual and giving him also the credibility to know what's good for him and not good for him, or working for him and not working for him. Because there's always, I think in English you say there's more than one way to skin the cat. So if I work with a player and one task doesn't really grip and you see no change, then there's other ways to approach it. So I think that where the trust comes in, because people say you really want to find out who they are as an individual and what's best for them, and to really find something, not the movement, but their movement.
And is that process automated in some way? I think back to when I worked in the US and in New Zealand. I remember coming back from both, and some of the behaviors and the words that I said and the way that I acted was just a subconscious sort of, I'd taken it on board and just said it. So, you know, when you're coming into a coaching context, are we actually consciously thinking about trying to do this? Or is this something that the more and more we put ourselves in this situation, the easier it's going to become?
It's becoming more easy. It's really becoming more easy because you just deal with everything fresh. As coaches, we have our toolbox, and then we just look, okay, we have this person. Okay, what tools do we pick out of the toolbox for him? Yeah. I think it's difficult, or it's easy to fall into one box and stay in there. I myself as a coach love to go outside, trying different boxes and thinking outside of the box, because I think my approach is I owe it to the student that I really try to find the one cue that works for them. And I have that sometimes, I'm sure you can relate to it, where you have a drill that works with so many people, and then that one person comes along where it totally doesn't work.
Yep.
and you thought it was like the drill of the century, because it works so well with so many, and then one guy comes and you go like, oh, okay. So this is just, I'd like to keep it fresh all the time and just try to approach it really individual.
Okay, cool. And then to start a different note, and I'd like to sort of get both of your takes on this one. You know, the idea that relatively new novice coaches tend to splurge all the information and knowledge out that they can to try and explain their methods and their reasoning. We're just wondering what your opinions are on that then, with some of the principles that we talked about. Is it right or wrong to do that?
I think it's natural.
Please, Marie, do it.
I think it's natural to do it. I think it happens to all of us when we're nervous. So I think that's when the body language comes into play, that you can really take a deep breath, you reposition yourself, and you can also go, you know what, I don't know, I look it up and I come back to you on this one next time. Davide, do you want to add something?
No, I want just to say that actually as coaches we fall in this trap often. And I think the most important thing is to let the people experience things through their senses, through their experience, and not really our experience. I do believe we can just give input to the people and try to guide them and help them, but I think the most work is coming from them. So we just sometimes we have to be, you know, like silent and just let the people experience.
Okay, great. Thank you both for that input. I've got a question from Ian. This is in reference to your reading list, Marie, at the end. Amy Cuddy is renowned for a concept of power posing. Is this something you'd recommend to players when they're searching for confidence before and during a round?
I use it a lot. I use it on myself, and I also use it a lot on players. Same thing again, it's a tool I give them, and then they try it out and they see if it works for them and if it helps them. But I experienced my juniors, one of my junior group told me the other day, because the final started today in Austria, and he does it before every exam now in school, for 2 minutes, standing like his favorite superhero. And it just helps him because at least it takes off the pressure. Yeah. If it doesn't do any other thing, but I noticed that the way the pros behave when they walk on the course is very different to the amateurs you see on the course. And of course their game is different, but it's also their attitude. And he is famous for that fake it till you make it. So at least in some situations, I can't hinder you.
And in some respects, that's actually something that, irrespective of the swing and technical ability, etc., is something quite, so long as you stick to it and maintain discipline, is relatively easy to adopt and use. It just requires persistence, surely.
I tried a lot, for example, in routines with players. And I had a few courses lately where I really tried to, they do their whole process, then they go behind the ball. And the moment they step towards the ball and take their setup until they swing, they have 5 seconds and they have to count it down, which is quite a short time frame. But people saw, even with feeling like rushing it, they didn't hit it bad. They just got in a flow. So I think a lot of these position stuff, routine stuff, is to get us in a state of mind to pull off whatever we have. That at the end of the day, we say we want more and we want a better technique or so is one thing, but pulling that what we have in that moment and using it completely.
I'm just wondering, just thinking back to some... Oh, go on, Davide.
No, sorry. I just wanted to add one thing, that actually, if we look in pros playing, we barely realize if they are playing good or bad. If you see amateur tournament, you will see straight away that somebody is playing bad or good, just about from posture, from the way they're making the routine and anything. The pro are really constant in this process, and that's, I think, why they get often in the flow, even if they don't play very good that day.
That's okay. Ian makes a quick comment back on that as well, as that Ian Poulter would be a good example. I guess that's actually the perfect example, really. Just thinking back to some of my own experiences, in that it's very easy to, I always remember coming onto the tee or whatever, and as soon as you're in a good state and you're scoring well, it's quite easy to maintain. And then I realise, as soon as the game goes out the window, it's quite challenging. So I've certainly taken something away from this today, in that I've got to persist and persevere with it as well, because there's clearly a performance benefit from it, surely, yeah?
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Oh, really?
Especially because it's one of these strategies when we look at things, we have different strategies for things that are working and things that are not working. And if we can take these things that we are doing for the situations where it works well, and we transfer them to all the time. I mean, that's all the people come to me and say, I want to be more consistent. But like Davide said, consistency starts with a consistent routine, because it always gets you in the same state. Go on.
Sorry, I just on that. For example, one thing that I make very often with player, I let them go for a round and ask themselves after just to write down the thoughts they had. And it's amazing how you can see really a difference between a good player and a player that is maybe 20 handicap or somewhere around that. Because somebody came back to me with 12 different swing thoughts or anything, and a good player is coming back and he say, okay, today I had 2 things and I just tried this and this, and this is where the constant starts, because as Marie said, everyone is looking for, to be able to produce more time a kind of shot, a certain shot. But people, it seems that they are not able to think in the same way. So, for example, somebody staying on the range and today is practicing to hit in the ground, okay? And he say, wow, great, I hit the ball great. And then they go on the course and they don't think that. They think about the flag, they're thinking about to keep, I don't know, the head steady. So there is some incongruence there, and that's why the game will suffer.
Okay, great. Anything else to add on that, Marie? Or
no, if they have no other questions,
no, that's fine.
I agree with that.
Okay, so I think we've actually, that sums up the questions, really. I mean, ultimately, what I'd say is, if it's okay, if anybody else has any other questions, they're okay to email you guys and find out a bit more, if that's okay, seeing as they're on there. Hello?
Yeah.
I think I've just lost you. Have you got me back? I think you lost me there, not the other way around.
Yeah. Got you. Yeah.
Perfect. Right, I'm back. Okay, yeah, great. So I think we'll just close things off then. So as I just said, if you've got any other questions for Marie or Davide, just drop them an email on there. I think I found that really interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of things you can take away for your own coaching practice, but I'm just thinking for myself, as well, from your own playing point of view, it's there's a few things you can I can certainly try and adopt. So if I don't shoot 600 tomorrow, I'll be emailing you, Marie.
Thank you.
Finally, just want to say thank you to everybody for attending today as well. I hope you did enjoy it. We will, obviously, we've recorded today, so we will upload them straight onto the hub page afterwards. So if you've missed anything or want to go back over it, you can there as well. This is actually the last week of the CPG Masterclass series, which is really sad for me because I've been on the journey from start to finish. But we've got 2 more. We've got one on Wednesday. It's a coaching with technology one. It's with Iconic Golf. So it's very relevant for the current situation that we're in. And then on Friday's part 3 with Marie and Shirin Hornecker, which is a part 3 of communication science and coaching as well. So if you want to join those, do register for them on the hub page afterwards as well. Finally, just want to say thank you again once and for all. And Marie and Davide, I don't know if you want to close off and say anything as well to everybody.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a pleasure for me. Thank you very much. Really, I enjoyed it.